Okay, welcome back everybody. So before we were talking about compression artifacts, and I just want to quickly go over some of the popular image file types that you might come across as a digital photographer and demystify them a little bit so that you will know what to use. Now JPEG, that's the one that we are most familiar with. It has a lossy compression. It's 24-bit color, which remember means every pixel has 3 colors and each color has 8 bits worth of information. Generally, for photographs, this is the one that you are going to almost always use. Alpha just means that it has the ability to do transparency, which you'll notice we can't have in JPEG, which is okay, but most of these other formats we can. So GIF, I talked about before with that run length encoding, where we saw the flags and we were able to compress those flags down to a very small size. That is a lossless compression, but the problem with that is that the color is only 8-bit. So though there's a little bit of a trick here, though the color you can actually choose from 24 bits worth of color, it's actually, you can imagine like a painter's palette. You can only pick 8 bits or 256 different colors from those and be able to represent a photograph with it. So even so, if you remember before, using that lossless compression technique with the run length encoding, if that wasn't bad enough for photographs, that's really a nail in the coffin. That produces some pretty bad images for us. So avoid GIF. Ping is also losslessly compressed. It's also 24-bit, just like JPEG. It does support alpha, so this sounds really great, but it's just not as widely supported as JPEG. So, and also because it is lossless, the files aren't as small as the lossy compressed JPEG. So everything is give and take here. So PSD, that's a Photoshop type file. I don't actually know what type of compression they use. If any of you happen to be on the Photoshop team, please tell me. And it can actually support 48-bit color, which, as you remember, means it has the 3 channels, and each one, and when I say channel, I mean it has the 3 colors, red, green, and blue. Each one is 16 bits. And it can also support transparency within layers, and we'll talk about Photoshop in the future. TIFF, if we are talking about needing the absolute highest quality from after you've processed a raw file out of your camera, for example, then you will probably save in TIFF because it is losslessly compressed. It is 48-bit. That means you get as much possible color out of it as you possibly can, and it is also fairly widely accepted. And as an extension to GIF above, it also has the animated GIF. So if you ever see dancing hamsters, that's the one. Okay, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about this class as well. I didn't want to go through this entire class just throwing information at you. So this class has 14 lectures. This is the first one. There are a few holidays interspersed throughout the semester. Be sure to take a look at the syllabus online for more information. The first one is next week. So unfortunately, I won't get to see any of you next week. And don't come because I will undoubtedly be sleeping. And so then after today, we start Software Tools and Light 2 weeks from now, so on and so forth. And you can see that we have a variety of topics, including exposure. We do a lot of exposure because that's really important. Optics, where we talk about lenses and do some fun little math there. The histogram, which you may wonder, well, what on earth can we talk about an entire lecture on the histogram? Just you wait. I will surprise you with all of the information that we can learn. Software tools continued. As you can tell, this is a computer science class. We will be talking quite a bit about software tools, most specifically Photoshop. Assignment slideshow. So in the assignments that are given to you, and the first one was given out today, you'll actually be submitting some photos, and I think it will be, and in the past, students have really enjoyed looking at everybody else's photos to not only not to poke fun at them, of course, but just to take a look and see what interesting photos people have taken. And this actually has been a great hit in the past, and I hope to continue that this time. Digital cameras. And here, this is somewhat of a misnomer. We're talking about some of the technology specific to digital cameras, like digital sensors, some of the really funky stuff that differentiates digital cameras from their film counterparts. We have 2 lectures on that. Then color. So color is very important, and it's very difficult to be able to reproduce color accurately through the entire chain. So from the camera to your computer to print to web, for example, this is a big thing. And if the semester were longer, we would probably do more lectures on color, but there's only so much of that I can take, frankly. Then artifacts, so all of the problems that can happen because of digital photography. And we've started talking about some of them, like dust, and we'll continue to talk about them throughout the semester, but we will really be sure to show you an exhaustive or nearly exhaustive list of artifacts in that lecture. Finally, even more software tools where we do some final really fun Photoshop stuff, and then the final assignment slideshow the second. So in addition to the lectures, there are 4 assignments. You should consider them to be projects. They are 3 weeks long, except for the first one, which is 4 weeks long, because there's that annoying little Monday that we're missing next week. So be sure that you read them and start them early. Trust me, you'll have your hands tied with these, even though they look somewhat short at only 5 pages. But the class is very doable, so don't worry about that as long as you stay on top of it. There's also one final project where we don't really have anything to talk about that yet, but we will in just probably in a month or 2, and there's 0 exams. So just like, I have to say, the first semester I had exams, and then I realized, well, what's the point? You're not going to have pen and paper when you're out taking photographs and have to figure out, do I really need to be doing this, and write down something like that? So none of that. This is much more practical than that. And finally, we will conclude the semester with the computer science fair that we share with Computer Science E75 Building Dynamic Web Pages, which unfortunately happens at the same time as us somewhere else in this building. But we will have a sort of a joint fair with them where you can show off your work. And last year, all the E7 stuff was much better than the E75 stuff. So I hope none of you are in E75, but I'm just telling you right now, we have high expectations for you. Okay, the course website, cse7.org. This is where it all happens. You can find all of your resources here. Though there's no required textbooks, we do have a few that you might, we recommend if you want to pick up some textbooks, but a lot of resources are available here. Also, you'll notice that as we are videotaping this lecture, we will try to videotape most lectures, not all of them. For example, the assignment slideshows, I think that's going to be really boring, just picture after picture on video, so we're not going to do that. So be sure that you are present for lecture 14 and lecture 8, but pretty much the rest we're going to try to videotape and put on the course website a few days after the lecture takes place. It's not meant as a replacement for lecture because sometimes it can get a little close to when the assignments are due, and that's not done intentionally. It's just because we have to take the time to do the videos properly. But it is just something, it's an extra tool for you to be able to get used to the material. And I talk fast, so if you need to review something, not only can you ask questions, of course, but you can rewatch a lecture, or if you happen to be out of town, you can watch it there as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to email the staff@cse7.org. So I'm on that list. Chris Thayer is behind the video camera. She's also on that list. She's one of our TFs. And John Seelig, way in the back over there, who likes to stay as far away from me as possible, is also there, and that's us. That is the staff, and there's a lot of you. So please try not to email us individually. We will get to your question, but because there's 3 of us looking at this versus 1 of us looking at our individual email addresses, we will be able to answer your question the quickest this way. Comments, concerns, questions, doesn't matter. You can feel free to email us there. Now this semester we're trying a little bit of an experiment. We are going to be doing a lot of the submission for problem sets, and especially photos, on Flickr, which is a social website that you may or may not be familiar with. And we have established a group there that you must join to submit photos. And as part of that group, there is a discussion board. So if you have a question that's perhaps a bit doesn't need the privacy of email, for example, you might want to ask it on that discussion board. We will also be monitoring that discussion board as well, and you will also be able to get input from your peers. And this means that, yes, you can post photos that you're proud of, for example, show it off on the discussion board, and I'm sure, hopefully, everybody will be able to participate and take a look at what's going on there. Yes? Is there a question? No. Yes? Okay. No, not necessarily. So photos that are posted to Flickr are not necessarily public domain. So they have, when you sign up for Flickr, or more specifically, when you upload photos, you can define the copyright level of them. You can define, full copyright, all rights reserved on the photos there. There are a couple of caveats to that. One being is that it's on the internet, but you can set the photos to be private, which means that they will not show up on your Flickr profile. But when you add them to the Flickr group, when you submit and read through the assignment 1 for more details on this, they will show up to us. So there is a way that if you really don't want them to be visible to the outside world, you can set them private and still add it to the group. And only people that have access to the group will be able to view those photos. But in general, and we will be talking about this sort of copyright stuff much later in the course, in general, I'm an advocate of having slightly more loose copyright terms, especially if you post them on the internet, because someone is going to, if they like your photo, they're going to use it. Nothing is going to stop them on the internet from using it. And so rather than trying to deal with fighting for full copyright, because if you really want that photo to be absolutely yours and not disseminated at all, you wouldn't post it on the internet. We use, for example, even on the website, and for my own photos, we use what's called Creative Commons. And Creative Commons is slightly more lax than full-blown copyright, but you can actually select the terms that you would like. And so in this case, we say that you are free to take some of these photos and here, let me make it a little bit bigger. You can copy and distribute and transmit the work at will. You may even adapt the work, so you can take the photo and put a funny face on it or something, as long as it follows these conditions. So you provide attribution. So you say that it is from me or from the course, that you do not use it for commercial purposes, and that you apply these same conditions downstream, so that people that your derivative work or wherever you have posted it, those people that view it there can also perform these same steps. And this seems like more to the spirit, to me at least, of the internet, and also is a little bit more lax. You don't have to spend all of your time dealing with copyright issues. Yes? So on Flickr, there is a way they have built in the option to do Creative Commons. And you notice that here, this is some set of restrictions applied. You can actually, via Creative Commons, change the restrictions that are applied. So you can actually say, you know what, yeah, you can use this photo for commercial purposes. There's actually like a tool on Creative Commons website that you can use to help you pick the right one for you. And you enter in, there's like a code basically that I believe you can enter into Flickr, and they will be able to apply that directly onto your Flickr photos. But on the website, we just use something because, frankly, this hasn't yet been tested in court very thoroughly. I'm just using something very simple like my name, some rights reserved, Creative Commons, BYNCSA, which is the sort of code for that. You provide attribution, you share alike, and it's non-commercial. But that's a whole bag of worms that, since I am not a lawyer, I frankly can't really get into. Okay. Moving on. So yes, join Flickr and join the discussion board and participate in all this stuff. This is going to be a fun semester for us, I think. So if you don't have a camera, don't worry too much about it. We do have some cameras available for loan, and these are the Panasonic Lumix cameras, DMC-V's FZ8. It's a handful of letters and numbers, but these are, though they are a couple years old, they are pretty decent cameras. They're pretty good. You'll be able to complete all of the assignments with them, and you can rent them from the Church Street Lab. So 53 Church Street, if you just go out these gates right here and cross the street, it's right there. That's Church Street. Just find the Church Street Lab, and you'll be able to rent them from there. These have the capability for RAW photos, which if you're going to bring your own camera, it must have a few capabilities. It must be able to take photos in the manual mode, so that means you must be able to set all of the exposure settings. And also, you must be able to take photos in the RAW formats. If you have one or the other option, you can probably use the camera for a little while, but just note that we quickly ramp up, and you will have to be using both of those pretty quickly. Even in the first assignment, I think you'll have to be using the manual mode. So if your camera is not up to the task, not to worry. You don't have to buy a $3,000 camera and set of lenses. You can rent this from the Church Street Lab. I believe we have 8 available, and even though I fought them every single year, they still refuse to let students borrow them for more than 24 hours at a time. So do note that restriction, that you only have 24 hours with them before they do something bad to you. I'm not quite sure. So if you do have your own, if you have questions about it, you are, of course, more than welcome and to bring it to class, ask us questions about it. But generally, we're not going to be standing up and taking pictures of each other, just so that you know. So you don't have to bring your own camera from home. So generally, if you're familiar, and I've noticed this is decreasing over a couple of years, but if you're familiar with film cameras and you're new to the world of digital photography, you'll notice that there's a lot of similarity to film, particularly in how, especially a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today, there's a lot of similarity there. A lot of the terms are similar, but there are some differences, particularly when we get to talking about Photoshop, when we talk about some of the specifics of digital cameras and the way that digital cameras respond in certain lighting conditions. It's very different than film cameras. So you will not have a difficult transition, but you should still pay attention if you are familiar with film. So sensor sizes, for example, that's probably going to be, well, it's not too new, but it is somewhat new as far as SLR users go. ISO, all of these sorts of things are all very applicable from film over to digital cameras. Okay, so I want to take this lecture in a slightly different direction, because you'll notice from the lecture descriptions a little while back that there's a lot of technical stuff going on. We're talking about digital cameras, exposure, optics, all of this sort of stuff, histograms. And this class though we do reference the artistic side of photography, this is not an artsy class, so to speak. We focus on primarily on the technical details. And the idea is that by understanding these technical details, by understanding what all of this stuff means, you're then more free to express yourself creatively. But this doesn't mean that we ignore the artistic side, or that we think that the artistic side is unimportant, because obviously it's extremely important in a photography class. But what we're saying is that we just think that to get the full experience, you might have to go to, in addition to this class, another class as well. But part of this question, or part of the artistic side of photography, I think, is the question of what makes a photo interesting. And there's no right or wrong answer to this, obviously, and it depends on your definition of interesting, what you like to see and what you don't like to see. But generally, I think what can make a photo interesting is something that nobody has seen before, something that is new or exciting, or maybe not totally new to a person, but at least pretty rare to see. You don't see a lot of these types of photos, and that sort of photo is interesting in terms of the wider audience, in terms of the general appeal. And it certainly is easy, once you start getting really good with the technical aspect of photography, to realize that you just have nothing interesting to take photos of, and to fall into this sort of rut. And this certainly happened to me just a few years ago, where I just felt like I had nothing that I could take a photo of. I had a camera. I didn't have a lot of the equipment that you see here, but I had a camera and I knew how to use it. But I just feel like I had overdone. I mean, there's only so many photos of Harvard you can take before everybody has seen everything. And so what else is there to take? And so I guess I still can't answer that, but but at least, I feel like I have it back now, and this is something new, even in just the past few months, where I feel a lot more excited about this again. And so if you do feel like you've fallen into this sort of photographic rut, don't worry too much about it. Most likely you will get it back. Just don't forget how to take photos. But I think what can make a photo interesting is also what you like to do, what your hobbies are, what types of things you find particularly interesting. Water sports, in this case whitewater rafting, for example. I really love doing this. I don't do it as much as I would like, but this is one of those things that you can't take a bad photo when you're doing whitewater. Well, unless it's all water, then I guess that's a bad photo. But you know what I mean. It's in general bad. And if you are into water sports, I can talk quite a bit about this. You should probably get a case like this. This is called a Pelican case. It is a pretty hardcore case, and I think it's warranted. They say it's warranted against everything except shark bite, bear attack, and children under 5. You can use it as a soapbox. I stand on it. I sit on it all the time. I use this on this rafting trip, for example. I toss it into the river. It just floats downstream. As long as you can get it again, your camera equipment will be safe, and it's made very, very well. And this was actually my primary case for many, many years. But the problem is that even empty, it's just a little bit heavier than what you would like in a camera case. And also it's rigid, so you are limited by the volume that is inside of here. And so this doesn't look very big. As you can tell, it's not going to fit this lens very well. It's not even going to fit this lens very well. But some basic kits, some basic photographic equipment, you can put into a case like this. And of course, they do have various sizes available to you. Did I mention it was Pelican? I forgot. Okay, that would be important. It's just to show you this blank, generic gray case and say, buy this because this is great. Of course, it's useful if you are going to be going through extreme conditions. So sea kayaking, for example, or whitewater rafting, or pretty much anything where you're going to be abusing your camera. This is going to be a great case for you. And if you are going to be doing water sports, get a few of these NRS webbings. These are, you can get them, I don't know, just look, I think it's National River Supply or something like that. But this in combination with these cases, you can attach your camera, or rather, you can attach the case to pretty much anything and not worry about it. I strapped this camera to the rafts just exposed to the water, and yes, we did flip, and everything was perfectly fine. Nothing got wet, everything was perfectly dry. And I really don't care because these are really strong grips. They're not going to let go. And so that's just, it's not necessarily an endorsement for this stuff, but just what I've found has worked very well in this sort of thing. And another thing is that if you buy a decent quality digital camera, they're generally going to be made pretty well. They're going to be made out of plastic, and I hit the door, so it sounds flimsy, but they're generally going to be made of plastic on the outside, but have some sort of metal or magnesium frame on the inside. So they're going to be rigid, and they're going to be built well. I've dropped this thing in negative 10-degree weather onto some rocks, and there's a little chip somewhere, right here, but it still works absolutely fine. And so most of this stuff, I mean, you shouldn't abuse it. Don't throw it into the river, of course. But you don't have to really worry about some of this better stuff getting a little bit wet. You really don't have to worry about dropping it accidentally. A lot of this stuff, well, you should worry about dropping it accidentally if you go from up here. But it will probably outlast your interest in the camera itself. These are very well made cameras, especially the mid-range ones, which I will talk about in just a little bit. So don't overbaby your camera unless it's super compact, something like that. With decent equipment, you don't have to overbaby it. It is meant as a tool. It is meant to take a good photograph. But of course, take what I am saying within reason, and don't do anything silly or stupid with your equipment.